Hello, and welcome to another installment of what I'm calling Reflections. This actually, I was going to do it up in a PowerPoint, and I thought it's probably best served as an open conversation because if I was to do it on a PowerPoint or go through it in more detail, it would need very specific examples. Whereas I think everyone can relate to the topic I'm about to talk about if I talk about it in a more general sense. So, the thing I'm just going to speak on today is that it is probably a good idea for you to get general before you get specific. And that can be unpacked a lot of different ways, I suppose. So, I mean, looking across a lot of studies now and a lot of S&C coaches who are working with young people, especially, or people who are new to sport, or people who are just starting out on their, I suppose, athletic adventure, even if they're only 5 or 8 or 10, they're saying now that becoming a generalist is the way forward pretty much for any sport endeavor. That being too specific will, I suppose, have negative defects down the line. As you skip over some general things that are important to note. So a lot of coaches now, when working with kids, work on very, very general, basic things that you assume kids know how to do, or that you assume people just know how to do, be it jumping, sprinting, learning to land, learning to fall, learning to twist, learning to turn, learning to double jump, learning to use their body, learning to use their body weight, learning to move in different directions, learning to change their pace, change their speed, all of these kind of things. Um, all, of course, while trying to integrate it into games and into fun and into different things like that, that there's not a huge focus on the specific skill. And that goes for people who are coaching young weightlifters, young GA players, young soccer players, everything. There is a very, very big general component to it, and it's the way it should be. Now, the same principle, I suppose, should apply to you when you're on your journey of getting a specific goal. So even if you have a specific goal, it's usually good to get general before you get specific. So, for example, if you have a specific goal of deadlifting double your body weight, great. You can get very specific. You can go straight into a deadlift program. You can do deadlift or deadlift variations 2 to 3 times a week or every 72 hours or whatever way you want to structure it or get it structured for you. That's great. But what else are you looking at? If you want a double body deadlift, a double body weight deadlift, out of your body weight now, is there much contractile tissue there? Is there much muscle? Or is there a lot of fat? Might it serve you to actually lose some fat, gain some muscle, and that way pulling a big lift off the ground is going to be a lot easier, because as we all know, fat won't contract and pull, and it's not really going to aid us in our athletic endeavors or in our lifts. Now, the only thing I suppose fat does really, really help with is absolute lifts, which of course a heavy deadlift could come into. But if you want to specifically get better at any other movements, your body composition is going to play a huge role. So how do you get general before you get specific? You generally look at your diet, your activity levels, your sleep, and you nail those general things first. Or you nail those alongside your specific plan. Now, your specific plan, obviously, in order to get to that heavy of a deadlift, you're going to have blocks, you're going to have mesocycles, you're going to have to understand that, this might happen for a year, 2 years, depending on where your levels are at, or even longer. And it's the same thing no matter what the goal is. If you want to get faster or you want to get your 100-meter sprint, cut a few seconds off that for your sport, then you're going to again need to go general. You're going to need to learn how to sprint properly, how to accelerate properly, how to strike the ground, how to use your arms. Then you're going to have to look at things, even before that, you're going to have to look at things like body composition. Am I in an ideal body composition now? Again, do I have enough contractile tissue, or do I have a lot of fat that's not really aiding me towards the sprint goal over the 100 meters? Same thing for a 5k run, same thing for, I suppose, any sort of sport or any sort of specific endeavor. It is always a good idea to get general before you get specific. And that general usually comes down to, a lot of the time, what you do outside of the training, what you do outside of the gym, and what you do outside of the specific goal. So, other lifts, other things include, if you specifically want to pick a goal. If you specifically want to run a marathon in a certain amount of time, you know, you're going to have to really look at your body composition. You're going to have to really look at your body weight. You're going to have to look at your training schedule. You're going to have to look at your stress. You're going to have to look at your recovery. You're going to have to learn to take that much volume before you can even get into the specific of time splits. There's a lot of examples I can go over. Maybe it is something I will touch on in a specific post or in a specific PowerPoint. But I do think there's a huge benefit to being general before you get specific. Another one that just popped into my head is people really trying to get specific in their off season for their sport. And this is someone who's been playing sport for years and years and years. You know, you hammer in the running, you hammer in the specific sprints, the specific kind of gameplay scenarios or specific movements of your sport. And then, you know, it's a very long year. You're going to start with the team again, and it's going to be like doing 2 seasons back to back. Whereas if you're staying generally fit and you go through a sort of general program in the off season, that when you get into that preseason training with your team, it's not going to be a huge jump that you're going to be buried for the first few months, but you're also not repeating a very hard preseason again like you just did. So I think it was, I don't know who quoted it before, but it said, are we robbing ourselves of being human by becoming too specific? And I think it's very important for most of us, especially in the general public, to become generalists, to be able to pull from lots of different exercises, to be able to pull from lots of different tools, to be able to run, bike, cycle, walk, hike, to be able to lift, to be able to jump, to be able to throw, and to be able to do all of these kind of encompassing things that other people deem as fitness. That's really the whole point of the video today. It's more so just a statement that I think I've said it more than enough by now, but to just nail it in again, if you have a specific goal, before you look at the specifics of it, aka I want to squat 1.5 times my body weight. What is my body weight now? Am I carrying much fat? Could I lose a bit of that fat? Can I have a bit more muscle on the frame? If I can, great. What does my diet look like? What does my recovery look like? Am I able to get this amount of frequency of squats in? If I'm not, I'm going to have to look at my sleep. I'm going to have to look at my hydration. I'm going to have to look at all of these other things. I'm going to have to generally get strong at single leg work. I'm going to have to get a strong back to be able to hold that kind of weight up on my back. I'm going to have to get a strong quads, hamstrings, glutes, whatever you find is more dominant or whatever way you squat. You're going to have to specifically focus on those areas to be able to manage that specific goal down the line. So again, general before specific, always.